So, do you all remember back during my review of My Alcoholic Escape from Reality, how I said I really wanted to check out more of Nagata Kabi's works? Seeing as how this was the first time I'd ever read a diary-style manga? Well, the good news is I actually managed to get lucky enough, and by complete surprise, mind you, to find another one of her works in my local bookstore. And as soon as I saw it, I tell you what, I immediately snatched it up. I actually just finished it today, as a matter of fact. I got halfway through it last night, and just managed to finish it earlier this morning. However, I was not expecting this one to hit me as hard as it did. And yes, judging by the cover art, you can already tell this one is going to be a weird one. Very weird, it was. But at the same time, Jesus Christ, some of this stuff was way too real. So remember how I said My Alcoholic Escape from Reality was like a diary manga? This one, as evidenced by the title, was literally a diary in manga form. And yet, this one hit way harder than I thought it would. I'm going to tell you exactly why it left me with this kind of reaction shown here. So, let's get to talking about it. So to be completely honest, I was not expecting this one to cover such heavy topics as depression, wanting to leave home, and that need for just physical affection. Or as Kabi actually states in the manga, wanting to love and be loved. So man, every time I was reading this, I always felt a major gut punch. Especially when it came to the depression part, as well as that need for physical affection. Because I've actually dealt with that a few times where I've actually felt depressed. Or just a simple lack of motivation, or just that straight up emptiness. And let me tell you guys right now, that is the absolute worst to deal with. Just that constant feeling of emptiness, the feeling like a gray shroud over your mind is just, it is the absolute worst. But seeing that reflected here in this manga was definitely a gut punch. Because there were so many times I looked at that, every time it came up, and I was just like, this is way too real. And the need for physical affection especially, because honestly, I'm not the best at talking sometimes. Probably because I'm Asperger's and ADD. I can talk, sure. But most of the time, it's very overwhelming for me. And sometimes I just go off on an absolute ramble. And there's some moments when I just don't want to talk and just want to hold somebody. Just really just take a minute and just breathe, not talk, and just feel. And seeing all of that expressed throughout this manga as I was reading it, damn, just everything about this was really hard-hitting. Especially since it put her in the age of around the early 20s. I can tell you right now, a lot of people probably go through this. That kind of stage where we just want to leave home, be independent, as well as that search for a partner, someone that will allow us to love and be loved, and also dealing with depression as we start moving into adult life and realizing just how difficult and unfair it can actually be. But the story definitely kept me going all the way through, and I liked the way it was written as a diary entry of her talking to herself and addressing either her past or her future self, depending on the chapter. I really liked that, actually. It made for a very interesting way to read the story, as it shows her progressing through her life on a day-to-day basis, practically. Or it could be over the time of months or even years, who knows. They don't really specify a date to these entries, which is totally fine by me, as it just emphasizes that this is her telling her story. and I honestly thought it was fascinating all the way through. Needless to say, I will definitely be picking up book 2 of this to see how much further the story goes before I reach my alcoholic escape from reality. Because apparently, this one here, Solo Exchange Diary number 1, is actually the second book in Kabi's works of autobiography manga. So that is 2 down now and 2 more to go until I'm caught up until book 5 arrives. Yay! So I said this before the last time I reviewed one of Kabi's works, but I really do appreciate the art style. Especially since this one looks way more elaborately detailed than my alcoholic escape from reality did. Well, I take that back. There were quite a few moments where they had some extreme level of artistry, but this one really outshines more, I guess. Probably because there was a lot more dramatic facial expressions as shown in some of the examples here. As well as drawing these types of expressions of confronting yourself and your own bad habits, being reminded of your own battles with depression, or even just that simple facial expression. I actually really liked this art style going through. And to me, it helps it to stand out a lot more among many common manga that are either elaborately detailed or just ridiculously over the top or simplified. This one has that kind of hybrid look of both simple and yet extremely detailed. It knows how to be simple when it needs to be, but also when it needs to draw a major expression. And that's where this one really shines in things such as facial expression a lot of times. Whether facial expression or reaction, or even just showing us what the author is talking about. Such as, for instance, when she is reminded of her own depression, as shown here on the far left, we see a very extreme reaction. Or at one point when she's confronting a bad part of herself, we see her actually, knocking the lights out of it, as shown here on the far right. But then up in the upper right, we actually see her coming to the realization that she needs help when it comes to her own self-esteem. And I like how it's the equivalent to a measuring stick, like a personal measuring stick. Sorry for that slip up. And to be honest, that really rings true a lot. A lot of people seem to think that we need confidence from other people, but in reality, we need to learn to value ourselves, place our own value, or I guess in her case, use our own measuring stick to really see our own personal value, how we see ourselves. It was a fascinating look at this, and it really brought up a lot of interesting questions. So yeah, definitely give this art style a 10 out of 10, especially since it's such a standout among many other manga. So all in all, to be fair, my overall score for this one here, my Solo Exchange Diary Book 1, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. For really hard-hitting storytelling, but also really well done art style. Like I said, I really like how Nagata's works are very different, and the fact that it also adds a splash of color everywhere. And honestly, I will definitely be picking up more of her works just to have the complete series on my shelf. Not only that, but to also see more of this author's story. I think it's because of her I might actually be checking out more autobiography style works, as now I've come to realize it's fascinating to get inside of a person's head, really see things from their perspective. All in all, I would definitely recommend going to check this one out if you're interested in a slice of life, or if you're also interested in seeing an autobiography in manga form. Either way, thank you all for listening. Hope you have a good day. Please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe to this video. And again, thank you all for listening, and have a good evening.